Morning, David.
Yes, morning, Karen.
Second morning of the day to you.
Second. Oh.
Yeah, I said good morning and then we started chatting, didn't we? And I said, hang on.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. My maths is crap. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, second morning.
I thought your
Yeah.
math was supposed to be good. Morning,
No,
top
I
of the
know
morning.
yeah. All right. I was just teasing. Yeah, it's
I
pretty good.
know.
I'm a bridge player, so my maths is my. It's not that. It's just handling numbers and handling information generally. If you people out there, if you want to improve your brain, play bridge. There you
I
go.
want to learn. I do, but I've moved now, so I'm the other end of the country, but I will learn. But what was interesting, David, just as we were chatting, when I do these little chats, I don't call them interviews, I just call them chats on Wise Women Weekday. So if you are watching this, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, like, comment, and all that. But quite often you miss the nuggets because in the pre-chat, the pre-recording, you're chatting away and you miss those golden nuggets. And that's why I said, hang on a minute, let's pause and talk about what we were talking about, which was listening, wasn't it? We were just talking about listening because we're doing an event in Canterbury, which we'll come back to on the 19th and 20th of October. We'll come back to that. And we aren't getting enough, excuse me, people at the moment coming. We're not selling enough tickets because it can accommodate 300 people. And we were just chatting about that generally, running these events. Sometimes there's so many events going on, people don't know where they're at, or they can't afford it, or they can't take the time off work. You then said you've posted it on all these groups, and some groups haven't picked it up. They don't know it's happening. So then I went on to say, well, it's about this listening thing, isn't it? Quite often when somebody talks to you, the other person is so keen to get out what they want to say, they're not listening to what you have to say. And they're sort of nodding, and all your wonderful information has gone way over their head. And then they just spurt out all the stuff that they want to say. And there is a skill, isn't it? And that's what we started talking about. I said, I was a Samaritan, so in my 20s, and we were taught how to listen. It's a skill. And then you said, what did you say, David?
Well, I said two things: that I used to be a citizens advice operative. So I was trained, that was after I was a lawyer. And so I was trained to be an active listener. And it is, and I said it's eye-opening, although ear-opening experience, because you take for granted that as long as your ears are active, that you're listening, but you're not, you're hearing, and there's a big difference. And the other thing, the little anecdote that I threw in was that somebody called me recently and I went into active listening mode, which means you go very quiet and you're really listening hard. And after 2 minutes of nonstop talking, she said, "Are you still there?" Because you, and I said, "Why? What's the problem?" She said, "Oh, I'm not used to people listening to me like that, you know." And I just, she assumed that I'd put the phone down. Well, you can't put the phone down on Telegram, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
click the off
yeah,
button. And this is what another relevant thing which we didn't discuss before is data overload. People are overloaded and they have a low data threshold now. So if you're talking to them, giving them data, they can't handle it. And so all what they can handle is what they were about to say because it was preloaded. So that's the kindest thing we can say. It's not people are switched off. It's not that they've switched off to other people. It's that they've got a low tolerance for new stuff, and it's a shame. And maybe it's also to do with the pace of life, and everything seems to be accelerating. And going back to your idea of people scrolling down, so not only are they not listening, they're not looking, that they're seeing a meme, but they're not looking at it. They just keep scrolling and they're looking maybe for a dopamine hit, which means they're something that's really going to catch their eye. And we all do it. Let's face it, we
yeah,
all do it.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
it's it's dopamine issues, really. We're all pleasure seeking like there's no
We
tomorrow
are.
because there's so much stress to counterbalance with the pleasure, isn't there?
That's right. And I love your term uploaded. People are already, they want to upload what they've got to say and their mind is full and they can't always compartmentalize, because they just want to dump this information that they've got so they don't take in some golden nuggets of information. And I think it's the society in which we live, it's like instant gratification, isn't it? You know that you just want it now, now, now. And I don't know if that is part of what the major plan has been, especially with the young people with the phones. Like you say, they scroll, 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 and it's zombifying. You know, I'm when I'm around young people, boom, 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 and I mean, what are they looking? It's scary, actually. It's scary because the young children coming into the world that are, they seem to come out the womb with a bloody, you know, an iPad in their little mitts. It's very scary because they are missing out on a lot of valuable information if they're just looking,
Well,
scrolling around.
Going for the bigger picture slightly, what's happened in general terms, particularly for people under a certain age. Not sure what that age is, but let's say it's, for sake of argument, 40. You know, the millennials and later. A picture of dystopia has been painted. You know, climate crisis, infectious diseases, all these hoaxes. And let me just say, if anyone, you know, has any doubt about my position, anything that's negative and that is threatening to humanity is a hoax. It's just a hoax. It's all a psychological operation. Now, you have to be above a certain age to know that, because back in the day, life was just life and nothing has changed. But for the under 40s, it has appeared to change, and in such a way that they think the planet is prone to extinction, that life as we know it will come to an end. It's all nonsense. And I'll give you an example of this. There's a girl I learnt about recently. Her mum was telling me, or maybe not her mum, but her mum's friend, was saying that if anyone uses the word sun, okay, as in the sun in the sky, she goes into virtually anaphylactic shock. She goes into panic mode because she's been led to believe that the sun is going to stop shining in the near future, or the climate crisis will be so disastrous, will reach such a boiling point, as it were, that we won't have access to the sun because there'll be so much crap in the air, in the atmosphere, that it will block the sun out. So she goes into total crisis, and this is what's going on. So all these young people are in crisis mode, anxiety mode. Apparently 1 in 5 teenagers are clinically have a clinical mental health issue. So what they're being offered is an alternative realm, and that's why they've got their heads, you know, buried in a gadget, because in that alternative realm there's no crisis, and they can have pleasure hit after pleasure hit, and that's where and that's what's making them into zombies, because this metaverse that they're being offered will give them all kinds of pleasure and joy and wonderful experiences, whereas the actual Earth, which we know as a beautiful place, and it will be no less beautiful in the future, is, according to these young people, a dangerous place full of psychos, terrorists, planetary destruction, and so they're trying to escape from that.
It's all fear-based, isn't it? Do you remember in the day that it was a nuclear thing that they put on, you know, in my generation when I was I don't know how old I was. I think actually I'm a teenager, perhaps. And I just remember reading books about what to do when when the nukes hit us and we had to go under the table. And there was an element of fear there, because I thought, oh, it is going to happen, because, and maybe I was on the tail end of it, I don't know, but I just, when I compare what's going on now, and I think, well, what's went on in my youth, there was this fear of a nuclear attack. And it's like we are constantly being fed these fear-based stories: climate change, sun, disease, whatever it is, wars at the moment, which, okay, they are going on, but it's like something, it's planned, isn't it, to keep us in this state of fear. And then when you're in fear, you have to go to somebody, if you don't know what's going on, and you ask for help. And then we go to people in uniforms or in government, and we think, well, or we just assume they're going to help us. And I think that is part of the problem. If you are in a uniform, whether it's a white coat as a doctor or a suit, people think, or the teacher, you go to authority and you expect these people to help you out. But most of them are at the higher end of the pyramid, they're the ones that are causing the fear in the first place. So interesting times.
Well, the thing is, I call them out, they're all agents. And a couple of things. I always like to enumerate the things I'm going to say, because if I only say one, then I know I've forgotten something. So two things, maybe three, but certainly two. In terms of fear, I'm going to go biblical on the fear issue. I think it's from the Gnostic Gospels. Now, I should know because it's in my current slide, in my current talk called Building Resilience, which I'm going to take to Ireland at the end of this month. And it says, fear not the man or woman, obviously, that can take your life, but fear instead the man or woman that can take your soul. And so what we're talking about is medical intervention, because even in a nuclear disaster, you've got nothing to worry about because you just die and you were going to die anyway. So there's nothing gained, nothing. It's a neutral event. Nobody's taking your soul if there is a nuclear event. And there won't be a nuclear event. I've got good news for people out there, because there are no nuclear weapons. None. It's another bluff. It's another hoax. It's not in the interest of the elite to have nuclear weapons, because they would get nuked themselves. And so you have to have a reality check on certain things. There are nuclear reactors, yes, but you need so much water to make a nuclear warhead stable that it wouldn't get off the ground. It's a bit like those planes that they say need thousands of gallons to fly. No, they don't. They only use fuel to take off and land. But once they're in the air, they use aerodynamics. So in other words, we've been lied to about everything. Now, I said that wasn't the two things. There was something else. Yeah, the agent. All these agents are agents of fear, agents to induce fear into people, like the teacher. And it occurred to me recently, I've been having a lot of aha moments recently, Karen, actually. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's happening to other people, but definitely happening to me. And one of them was that we've all heard of the deep state, and it's the perma government. It's the government that actually runs the world. Is not elected, it's appointed and can't be sacked. But it occurred to me recently that the cornerstone of the deep state, believe it or not, is the school classroom, because you've got to capture the innocents so that they can become victims, in inverted commas, of the deep state, fall for all its lies and its deceptions and its fear-mongering. But none of that would happen unless the deep state had its tentacles in the classroom. And so now my latest thinking is that, if we're taking on the deep state, we have to look at what goes on in the classroom. Now, I used to have those two ideas separated. You got the classroom tyranny and deep state shenanigans. But in my mind now, they are not separable. They really are not separable. So all those people out there who've got boys and girls in the classroom who are aware of the deep state, you've got to know that you are exposing your boys and girls to the deep state in the classroom, and it's becoming more and more obvious. A classic example, they put masks on kids in the classroom. Well, that's a deep state maneuver. Yeah, it's that simple.
And there were pictures going back then when you saw children in bubbles, some sort of plastic surround at their desks, and it was like a comedy show. Actually, it's not a comedy show, but I think you have to laugh. I think humor is really important, and when you know what's going on, you see how absurd some of these situations were in the classroom and outside the classroom. It's incredible, and it's so cruel. And I totally agree with what you're saying. It starts off at education. Even before, primary school, you stick them in the little toddler groups, what they're called, the kindergartens. That's when you've got them. And then wasn't it Mr. Blair that encouraged everybody to go to university, and then get a huge debt? So you're constantly in this system of authoritarian, being told what to do, what you can't do, and being just, I don't know, you've got these blinkers on, just absorbing all this information, getting a degree at the end. I mean, I know of people that have got a degree, whoopee-doo, 4 years of study and a debt and lots of pizzas under the bed and parties, but they come out and they don't have a job. They're not going to fly a plane. They're not going to be a doctor or an engineer. They've just gone to get a degree because they can. And I thought, what was that all about? And they're now like in their late 20s and they can't get a job. Do you know, it's and they're in debt. So I think there's something definitely wonky, for want of a better word, a bit wonky going on.
Yeah, when I ask, because in my talks, I have given specific talks on education, but my talks are more generalized on education, law, and health, because that tripartite, that triangle of knowledge, you've got to have all three legs, there's no such thing as a two-legged table or a two-legged chair. You've got to have at least three legs. There's a three-wheel car, a Reliant Robin. I mean, ideally 4 legs, but 3 is the minimum to stand, to be solid. And that's health, because without your health, you haven't got a life. Education, without education, you haven't got a life. Not schooling, there's a huge difference, and I'll come to that in a minute. Education and law. If you don't know who you are and what your rights are, you don't have any rights, because as a judge said in a case that I can't quote because I haven't learnt it, I only saw it the other day when I was scrolling. So like I said, we're all guilty of scrolling without really looking. A judge said, you only have the rights that it's only combatant. You have to be combatant to assert your rights. You have to be a combatant. In other words, what he was saying in posh judicial language is you have to fight for your rights, because nobody is going to give you them on a silver plateau. And the other thing about education that I would say is, and the reason why you're so right about people of 20, 25, 30 having no transferable skills is I ask people in my talks, what did you learn at school? And there's a deafening silence. And then I say, I'll tell you what you learned at school. You learned one thing. What's that? They say, it's that you learned to comply.
I was just going to say compliance.
Compliance. That's all you learn, because it's compliance that got you through school. Because if you hadn't learned to comply, you would have been thrown out.
Yeah.
And it's those that are thrown out of school that actually thrive the most. The odd exception, because they may have mental health issues possibly that prevent them from thriving in any situation. But most of the ones that get thrown out or leave early, like Richard Branson, or, leave early because they know that schooling is not for them, that they need to get out and have a life, get a life. They thrive. And the final thing, well, not the final thing, it's the other thing that I would point out, and it features in something called my Globalese lexicon. Doing a lot of promoting today.
Good for you. Why not?
Yeah, is this Globalese lexicon you can download from my website, thepeopleslawyeruk.com. Free. People say, "Oh, can I download it, print it off, and share it?" And I say to people, it would be rude and thoughtless if you didn't. Because people just assume, because they've got the matrix mindset, that if you create something, you've stamped it with a copyright symbol and you're going to prosecute anyone who uses it without your permission. That's not how I roll, right? I have a course, and that is something precious to me because that's how I earn my living. But everything else is given away because it's for the freedom movement. And so this Globalese lexicon, which is a gift, and it's a gift that keeps on giving because I'm adding to it all the time. It's in the A section, A, academic, which is what schooling is and has been since its inception. Well, they used to throw in the odd domestic science and woodwork and metalwork for good measure. But in the last 20 to 30 years, it's purely academic. And if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, so this is not me making anything up, academic is defined as of zero practical use or value. Yeah. That's not me. That's the Oxford English Dictionary. So they're telling us, this is the globalist telling us that if you go to school for too long, you're going to be useless. Yeah.
I used to work for a recruitment agency, and you'd have these young people that just come out of uni, and they'd check in, they'd sign the form, and they'd say, well, I've got a degree. And you think, yeah, but can you type? Can you answer a phone? Can you do this? Can you do that? Obviously they can answer a phone, but practical skills in that world 20 years ago, they couldn't, but they had this bit of paper, and they felt it was, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people, they felt because they'd earned this bit of paper, that gave them like the rite of passage to somewhere else. But it wasn't. They, again, in my mind, because I know so many young people that have done this, they've just got this bit of paper, and obviously 4 years of fun and games and whatever. And it's, I really don't mean to be disrespectful, and I'm not, but it's just they've been caught in this net, I guess, and they have been taught that it's indoctrination. They've been taught how to ingest information, maybe very rapidly. They can, study a book, and they can go through and relay that book, but they do not have the practical skills. And there's just hundreds of them. And I think that is the problem that we've got now, because vocationals, education, that was kind of pushed aside. It wasn't how to be a plumber, how to be a carpenter. You come out, I think I was at the end when I was at school, we did have home economics, how to cook and sew and stuff like that. But I don't think that's taught now, just in general school, just practical things, how to change a light bulb, how your bank account works. Instead, you go on these courses and learn things that are totally unnecessary, in my opinion, for a lot of people.
The only transferable skill that they teach children now, Karen, is how to masturbate.
Yes. No,
and
absolutely.
from the age of 4. Now, the thing is, people may say, oh, this guy's a lawyer. What does he know about education? Well, the thing is that I went to school, so I know something. We all went to school pretty much. And I happen to be the author of a book on schooling called School, No Place for Children. Yet another shameless plug, but who cares, right? So and in that book, there's loads of anecdotes about what schooling did to people, what it means, and it doesn't mean an awful lot. One of the references to the certification that you get, like GCSEs, A levels, degrees, I call them placebos.
Yeah.
And it's a massive bait and switch process. Yeah. They bait you with a certificate, and then when you get your certificate, you realize that it doesn't mean anything. Employers aren't interested in your certificates. They're interested in your personality, in your character, I should say, how well you cope under pressure, how well you can be, how good you are at team building and being part of a team, how creative and imaginative you are. And ironically, none of these skills are trained or improved at school, virtually none of them. And so what we're producing year after year is those useless eaters that the globalists are now endeavoring to wipe out.
Yeah.
And if you are a useless eater, one of the things you won't realize is that the globalists have got have put a target on your forehead. And so and if you have awoken or awakened to what's going on, it's really, it's awesome in every sense of the word, awesome, bad, and awesome, good, to watch humanity itself being targeted. It's incredible to realize that we are witnessing the greatest culling that there's ever been, and is both scary, naturally scary, exhilarating, because you're watching it. I can't watch movies anymore because they pale into insignificance with what's actually going on. I mean, some of them are predictive programming, like Independence Day and I don't know, and Hunger Games and all that. So they have some relevance to what's going on, but I can't, it's so like it's like fun. Every moment seems to be a Thunderbirds moment. It's like anything could happen in the next half hour, sort of thing.
Well, you said, like, okay, when you've gone through the system, you've got a target on your head. Can you elaborate? What do you mean? It's because you've signed up to their system, or can you just explain what you mean about that?
Well, they know that they've made you into a useful, either a useful idiot or a useless eater. So the useful idiot will be the doctor, the lawyer, the dentist, the architect, all the white collar workers are useful idiots.
Yeah.
They're idiots because all they know is the script that they've been tested on. That's all they know. I cannot speak to a white collar. There's none in my life. My friends are gardeners, writers,
Creative people.
educators, singers. I cannot relate to the white collar world. And in my 20s, I was part of it, but it made me sick. So I got out very quick.
Yeah, thank you.
So the target that's been placed on people's head, well, it's actually, well, you could say that they missed the target because the jabs went in here, but the jabs were in effect targeted at the brain, although they were put in there, they were. So the schooling system targets the brain metaphysically, and then the medical system targets the brain physically. And the media target it psychologically. So it's a massive. Professor David A. Hughes, who's one of the rare academics that's awake and on side, calls it the omni-war. So we are the targets in an omni-war. So all these arrows coming in from above, from below, from the side, from the back, from the front, on all levels, it's a multi-dimensional omni-war against humanity. So really, if you're human, there's a target on you here.
Yeah.
So the wiser ones, the more awakened ones will be removing the target from their head, going below the radar, not going anonymous. You don't have to be anonymous. You just have to be private and discreet. So if you have a controversial opinion, you don't go out there, which means online on a public platform, and vocalize it or verbalize it, because they will come for you. So in other words, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to put it out there. That's the current paradigm. So what I do, for example, I don't hide my opinions. I wrap them up inside talks or memes. And if it's controversial, I post it as a question. And I never attack anyone. So this, I'm kind of mentoring people now. You can be as skeptical as you want, but you don't attack. So you may know who's the architect of a particular problem, and you may know that it's Bill Gates, but you don't accuse Bill Gates. You just say, you can say, people like Bill Gates, for example. You can use phrases that soften it. Or you can just not bother naming anyone, because what's the point? Because at the end of the day, one man is just doing one thing. And if that man is scaring you with his intentions, then you have to look inside yourself and ask yourself, why am I so scared? Why am I bothered about what one man is doing? Why don't I just make sure that in my sacred space, everything is coherent and everything makes sense, and hope that more and more people will do the same? And therefore, eventually, the light and the coherence will extinguish the dark, because the dark can't extinguish the light. It's not actually a spiritual possibility. So we have nothing to fear from the dark, because the dark has no power over the light. Only the light has power over the dark, which is why the dark needs to convince the light that it isn't light and it has no light. As soon as you awaken to the fact that you are the light and you have light, you're immune from the dark. It's that simple. It sounds almost childlike in its simplicity, but that is it. And that's why children enter the kingdom of heaven more easily than grown-ups, because they know that life is very simple. They know that their will is God's command, whereas grown-ups have displaced that and put it in the hands of a teacher, a head teacher, a parent, a police officer, and that is anti-godly. And when you took the jab, you were going against God. And that is not a religious statement. That's a statement of metaphysical fact. Because if you were standing under God, you would know that you don't need anything artificial to protect you from anything, because there's nothing to protect you from.
Absolutely.
And so I know I've condensed a lot of truth bombs into just a short space of time, but just in case my brain goes into overload, I thought I'd just get them out.
Good for you. Well, people can always go over and over and over. They can pause it, write notes, and go back and watch these videos. And I think that's a very good lesson, if I'm allowed to use that word, that you said about it's, what is going on in our world individually, our sacred space. We know all that stuff's going on, and it can be a little bit daunting and creating fear for many, but it doesn't have to affect us. If we are the little lights, and there's all these little lights all over the planet, then we will get together and merge. And you're right, if you're in a room of darkness, one match will just light up that room of darkness. So
well, I walked two things, two anecdotes. One is I was living in Madrid when I was living in Spain, and I walked in, funnily enough, it was the Magic Circle in Madrid, which is a bit random. And I walked in, and literally every single man and woman in the room looked round to see who had just walked in. And that was a new experience, because my default mode is to be kind of invisible, especially in the Matrix, because they can't see you. They can't see, your frequency is too high. They just can't see you. But I walked into this very dark environment, metaphorically dark, and everyone just went, like, oh my God, what has just, not who, but what has just walked in? And the other anecdote, to highlight what I was saying in a very abstract way, when I was kind of leading, in inverted commas, the Manchester Freedom Movement, because I was the first one in Manchester to take to the streets with a microphone to say, this is bollocks, this is a hoax, calm down, people, no need to stress out, the BBC are lying to you, the government's lying to you. Well, as you can imagine, in the north, that got me into some hot water. And then we started doing rallies, and the police would come out to quell the rallies, if that's the right word, or at least to put us in our place. And even though the police were being bossy and aggressive, I did not allow it to upset me, because this is all part of the war. This is part of the war on humanity. And I got a bad rap in Manchester, in the Manchester Freedom Movement, because I wouldn't call the police out. People to my left and to my right wanted to, David, why aren't you calling them out? What do you mean call them out? Well, they're all pedos. And I said, well, they may well be, but I don't have any evidence of that to hand, and it's not relevant to what we're doing. Anyway, so sure enough, all these feisty, aggressive types, one by one, would be arrested, not on the same day, but they'd shout off, get themselves targeted, so put a target over their head, and then sure enough, you learn that they've been arrested on a particular day. Meanwhile, I'm not being arrested. Now, eventually, I did get arrested in Morecambe, not in Manchester, because what happened was they brought in this rule that you couldn't gather in groups of more than 30. And I was arrested for convening a group of more than 30, which was utter nonsense. But remember, I wasn't arrested for anything that I said. I was arrested by presumption that they presumed that I was one of the organizers, which I actually wasn't. And so the moral here is that if you just stay cool, calm, and collected, you won't get arrested. And if you can express your opinions in such a way that you won't, you're not going to put yourself in jeopardy under the Online Harms Act or whatever it is. And the terrorist in this case, in this country now, is the government. It's in breach of its own terrorism act, because it's putting people in fear. It's behaving in such a way that it's likely to cause alarm, harm, distress, or whatever. So the government is in breach, and in particular, Keir Starmer is in breach of all kinds of legislation, including potentially treasonous common law rules. When you are acting against your own country, against your own country's interests, that's treason. So we are dealing with lawless situations, treasonous situations, and people need to, if you want to take the moral high ground, just keep doing your research and work out all the rules and laws that the government and the government's agents including teachers. You know,
Yeah.
the classroom experience is full-on child abuse, end of.
Yeah.
And it's now child sex abuse under the guise of
I
PSHE, child sex education.
know.
So to take the moral high ground, you don't need to accuse anybody of anything. You just need to know what laws and rules that they are breaking. And the list is increasing day by day.
It's interesting what you're talking about there with the abuse of children. Before all this hoo-ha kicked off, I had my own charity and I was building schools in Africa, Sierra Leone. And there, FGM, female genital mutilation, was very prevalent. Even though it's illegal or unlawful, it carried on in the villages. So part of our education system was to teach the women, they're called sewers, to replace their skill in performing FGM and educate them as to why it's not a good thing and give them something else to do. Anyway, when you meet these women and you meet victims of FGM over in Africa, you just think, gosh, this is something from a different century. Now, what they're doing in the schools, with protected by the law, it's 10 times worse because it is FGM and it's male genital mutilation as well. It's unbelievable what they have been doing to encourage young boys and girls to switch. I want to be a boy, I want to be a girl. We all have, when we're growing up, our hormones are all over the place. So allow children to be, get into adulthood before they make any decisions about their sexuality. It's abhorrent. It's unbelievable what's going on. But aside from that, because I don't like getting too political about if that's political, it's not about me, it's really chatting to you, but my opinions do come into it. And what I'm going to ask you now, how am I going to put this? I think going through life, if we think of scales up and down, if we can be, neutral throughout, then we get through life a lot easier. Because when you're really happy, you can go up the top of the scale and think, oh, this is all exciting. But then you've got to come down, and sometimes you go down the bottom and you get really depressed. So I think staying in that neutral mode is key to a healthy existence. So I'm saying that because how do you cope when somebody, and people come to me and say, oh, David Adelman, he's actually a genius. That's one thing, that's putting you at the top of the scales. And then at the bottom of the scales, just on the back of our tour that we did up in Scotland, in Perth, September, just a couple of weeks ago, there were some comments saying that yourself and the other people in this lawful remedy business that we're trying to do to get information out, they're saying that the information that you have provided with your colleagues has put them into a lot of jeopardy. It's really caused a lot of problems. What would you say to that, if that makes sense? You probably haven't seen the comments, and it doesn't really matter what they are. It's just, is there a way of some people doing it wrong if they're getting into a mess? Because, okay, let's say that the genius side, because you are very, very intelligent, you're like a living Wikipedia, as many of you guys are. You can just reel out the dates, the numbers, the acts, all these things that have been put into play to control us. You can just relay them. And I think there is an element of genius in you to be able to do that. But then when some people may be following these suggestions that you're putting out there, they get into trouble. So what would you say about that, David? Has I made that clear-ish? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I kind of get it. Well, if people do my course, the first thing that they learn is that they need to unlearn everything that they've ever learned. Because if they don't unlearn what they've learned, then no new learning can take place, because there's going to be a cognitive dissonance, there's going to be a confusion and a chaos. The second thing that they learn is that they take full responsibility for their unlearning and learning, and for any decisions and actions taken based on that. Now, if people come with what I call the matrix mindset, so that's the second time I've used that phrase, so it must mean something. The matrix mindset is, I put you on a pedestal because you play the guitar or the piano or sing better than me, and therefore I will spend my hard-earned money on your records or CDs or downloads or whatever. Or you're a medical guru, you're a lawful legal guru, and I will follow you. Now, we're in the danger zone here. This is the schooling mindset where you follow the curriculum. What people mistakenly think is that we are laying down a curriculum. which has to be slavishly followed. That is a misconception. You don't slavishly follow anything. What you do is you take these ideas, and at the end of the day, that's all they are, and you see how they feel. How do they resonate? Do they feel right? If they feel right, you take action upon them. If you're not sure, you don't do anything. But what you don't do, what you must never do, and this applies legally and medically, is you go for the quick fix. And what these people who are muttering and moaning are complaining about is that they attempted a quick fix and it didn't quite work out for them. Why did it not work out for them? Well, in my opinion, it worked out for them because there is no such thing as a quick fix. Because at the end of the day, we are the remedy and we are a slow fix. It's taken me decades to be a slow fix for my own issues. Decades. So when I come along with decades of slow fix, and I come along, or someone like me comes along to an event, and some people in the audience are not coming with the slow fix mentality. They're coming with the quick fix mentality. So they run off with what they think is a quick fix, try it out, and it goes tits up. Okay, now, is it because the remedy offered was destined not to work? Possibly. But more likely, the remedy on offer would work with someone with the right mentality or in the right context or at the right time. So what I'm trying to say is that everything is colored in and it's multidimensional. There's what schooling system has done to people is made people believe that A, there is a quick fix, and B, you can write it down. None of that is true. All fixes are slow and no real fix can be written down because the remedy is inside of me. It's my consciousness. Now, if I'm given a practical tool or a verbal formula, it's not that practical tool or verbal formula that does the fixing. It's me assimilating it into my system and then using it as if it was second nature. So until things become second nature, they are not a fix, either quick or slow. And I'm still having multiple aha moments based on my own materials that I've written and rewritten and read 500 times. And I'm still going into my material and say, so that's what that means. But I wrote it, but I didn't have the full depth of understanding. I half understood it, or maybe I didn't understand it at all. And I'd copied and pasted it from somewhere thinking that I understood it, but I didn't. So what basically I'm saying in a nutshell is that everything is nuanced. Once you're dealing with words and people and life and agents and paperwork, it's all nuanced and you have to get a fix on where you are. You know, it's potentially very complex and you have to sort out where you are. You have to come with context. So if you go to an event, everything is out of context. And so you have to put the context back in before you apply the remedy. And remember that unless you comprehend it fully and it's second nature, it's not worth trying. Does that answer the...
No, I think, yeah, very eloquently. And I think because it's not just the brain, is it? You've got to feel. It's like it's an energy. I can't explain it, but you've got to really become sovereign. You've got to understand what you are, not just reading a book and somebody said this. You've got to get it. Like you say, it's second nature. It's automatic. You get on a bike, you just know it because you feel it. And I know over the years that I've been opposing the system, you know, I think all my life I've been a bit of a rebel. And when I've explained things to some people, they say, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? And I say, well, because you feel it. I can't explain it. You know, that the research or the situations that have come in your life or the people that you've met, and eventually you just get it. And just going to a talk, going to signing on a course and just saying, oh, you know, like you say, parrot fashion, as though you're going to school. He says that, so I'm going to do that. And then I don't have to pay my counsel. It's not about that at all. You have to really understand the reason why you don't want to pay your counsels. Not just because I don't want to pay it. It's because why. It goes very, very deep. Very, very deep.
And the other thing, and I'm going to do a shout out to someone that we both know in a minute, because he writes on this subject absolutely so brilliantly and eloquently. And the subject is attachment to outcome. and the man who I'm going to name is Singh. And I love his work. And he wrote recently in your thread on TFN something about it's not the outcome that determines the outcome. It's the man or woman that's predetermined the outcome. It's their level of consciousness.
Yeah.
So I have a specific example. There's one of my students rings me up now and again to say, good news, bad news, David. Good news is I'm still not paying my council tax, but the bad news is they're still pestering me.
Yeah.
And she regards that as a defeat. And I say, look, it's not a defeat. You're still winning because you're not paying your council tax and you're learning that you don't have to pay because they're getting more and more desperate.
Yeah.
And so her idea is, because she hasn't absolutely nailed them and got them to say, we're so sorry, we will never darken your door again, which is never going to happen because that would destroy the matrix.
Yeah.
So what she doesn't appreciate is that she is the remedy and she is standing up for herself. That is the outcome.
Yes.
And the consequences of that outcome are almost irrelevant. If someone comes to your door, it's because they don't have a remedy and they're just trying to scare you into compliance. I have a question, which is a teaser for people. If it's the situation is car, right? So they stop you and they seize the car. Now, my question is, have they seized the car because you have broken the law, or have they seized the car because you haven't broken the law? And I'll let people ponder on that for a few seconds, so I'll repeat it. Are they threatening to seize the car, or actually do seize the car because you've broken the law, or because you haven't broken the law? Well, my very simplistic answer is this. If you had broken the law, they would seize you. So you can't have broken the law. All you've done is infringed corporate policy. The law, what I mean by the law is the law that says do no harm. Because their law is not law, it's rules, it's government corporate policy. And when they call it law, that's false representation. It's not law, it's policy. So if you had broken the law, they would arrest and seize you. Therefore, they're picking on the car because the car is low-hanging fruit, because you are above them. They can't touch you unless you've harmed someone and they've got actual evidence that you have. So you're untouchable, so they have to go further, knock at the door. They can't touch you, but they can knock at the door. And if you know what you're doing, you can even prevent that. Or they can look at the car and say, we're going to take that, or we're going to stop it from moving, because you are not accessible to their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But the car is, because it's registered, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's registered, which means that it's a vehicle and it's government property, and therefore government rules apply, blah, blah, blah. Right. And the other situation is, if you are threatened with arrest, have you committed an arrestable offense? I'll repeat that. If you are threatened with arrest, notice the word threat, have you committed an arrestable offense? Well, using the logic from before, no, because if you had committed an arrestable offense, you would just be arrested. So they are threatening you with arrest precisely because you haven't committed an arrestable offense. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. In other words, the matrix is fear-mongering constantly. They issue threats because they have no authority and jurisdiction, and they hope that the threat will induce the compliance that they can't get any other way.
Yeah. And I think, referring to Singh, what you were saying, I'll add to that, because when I trained to be a yoga teacher a good few years ago, my first class, I had quite a few people. I kind of bribed them to come to my class. They were friends, family, and colleagues. And because I was being marked by my teacher to make sure that I was, proficient in teaching yoga. And I was so pleased because I had a good turnout, and I passed and everything was great. And then I was jumping up and down saying, oh my God, I had so many people at my first class. And she kind of wiped the smile off my face, but it was an amazing lesson. She said, if you have, if you have 100 people, that's great. If you have one person, that's great. If you have no people, that's great as well, because it's not about the end product. It's about your intention. You're turning up to deliver a yoga class. That's it. That's in your little world. You're there in your sacred space, giving a yoga class, you know, practice if people want it. If they don't turn up, it doesn't matter. It's not about that result. It's about your intention behind it. And I follow that law, that rule throughout my life. And that's why when we organize these events, if there's 100 people that come, if there's one people come, it's okay. Financially, it's a bit of a bugger. And also for the information that we're trying to get out there, but we are still doing it for the right reasons. It's not about the outcome. We are doing what we've kind of chosen to be on this planet for, to give our message, or to bring people together. That's how I see it.
And I totally agree. And when I speak to this woman that rings me now and again and complains that she can't get them off her back, I say, look, you are being the change that you wish to see. You've arrived.
Yeah.
You're there.
You're doing the work.
And this woman is an influencer. So I said, look, as an influencer, if you give up the ghost, you're gonna bring the pack of cards crashing down, because yeah, just keep going, just be the change that you wish to see. And
Absolutely.
only good things can happen, because it ripples outwards. That courage
Absolutely.
that she's showing ripples out, and the courageous ones must be even more courageous. The more courage you show, the more they up their game, and the more they try and scare you. And that's actually a positive result.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good. I'm just aware of the time now. We've been going for nearly an hour. I think it's really good to hear happy stories as well. People are contacting me with happy stories because they have won this situation, or they have, you know, not had to pay whatever it is. So I think we need to hear more of this to get it out there, to encourage others, because those people that are on the front line, the warriors taking the initiative, you know, we need to hear about their positive results so that can encourage others, because as we all know, it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game.
It is. And I've noticed, particularly recently, partly because the materials that I use are being constantly improved upon and expanded, but we're beginning to get numerous success stories coming through. You know, mothers with boys or girls that had the boy or girl taken off them, finding the power to maybe not take them back, but that's imminent, but relate to the boy or girl in such a way that they can empower the boy or girl to think about abandoning ship and coming back to the mother or father in some cases, where they'll get the freedom and the coherence and the common sense. And the one woman went into a family court recently using one of the questions that I teach, which is called the golden question, which is, are you making a claim, or what claim are you making over my property? And she asked it to the judge, and the judge went, I'm making no claim. And the barrister for the other side said, I'm making no claim. The solicitor said, I'm making no claim. And the social worker said, I'm making no claim. And she realized that there and then she could walk out with her boy or girl. I think it was a boy. She could walk out and nobody could make a claim over that boy because it's hers. And we're getting people who are having success with notices of intended prosecution for speeding, and direct debit indemnity reclaims, and all kinds of things. And the reason we're getting more success is not because the remedy is better than it was before, although it might be slightly improved, but because people are beginning to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
Because 2 or 3 years ago, when people came to my course in massive numbers, well, not massive numbers, but in big numbers, they came for the quick fix because we were in the middle of a lockdown. And as soon as the lockdown was lifted, people only been attending in 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. But the thing is that in the last 2 or 3 years, what's happened is that people have been tentatively using these remedies and having some success, some not quite so successful, but there's enough success now and enough confidence in the materials and in the users of the materials that again, it's the, you know, it's success breeds success.
Yeah.
And so now people are beginning to see that, in fact, they are the remedy, which is what I've been saying all along, and that they use the tools, that their internal confidence and knowledge can then use the tool. And another example of this is the tone of voice. In the past, and this happened even to me, actually, I also teach how that you can, in appropriate circumstances, reclaim direct debits from your bank. Some people go even further and say that there are procedures to reclaim all debit payments from the last 3 years. I don't go that far, but I'm not saying it can't be done. But I teach direct debit reclaims. And what I learned from my experience, that it's not so much your knowledge, it's your tone of voice that wins the day. So when you ring the bank, the default mode is the bank has replaced God Almighty, and you go like with, you know, as a supplicant, pleading for crumbs off the table. But in fact, when you're going for a direct debit reclaim, you are the beneficiary, you're the sovereign beneficiary of that direct debit indemnity guarantee, which means that they have all the obligations. You have none, not one, because the DDIG, direct debit indemnity guarantee, is for your benefits, for my benefit and for yours, not for the banks.
Yeah.
So when they put the inevitable obstacle in place, no, I'm sorry, have you, for example, they start firing questions at you, you can say in a voice, in the voice of God or in the voice of authority, look, I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to report an error. If you do not understand how the direct debit indemnity guarantee works, then I suggest you put me on to your supervisor or superior. Thank you very much. And if you adopt that tone, you will get way more success than you would have believed possible. It's the tone of voice. And they then become the agent. You stay the principal, they become the agent, and they have to obey your instructions. And that's exactly what happened to me the last time I did a direct debit indemnity guarantee reclaim. I adopted the voice of authority, and after initial obstruction, it all went quiet. They realized who they were dealing with, which is the voice of their superior. A man is superior to an agent, and the man, especially the beneficiary, must be respected, and the direct debit indemnity guarantee adhered to, and the reclaim must take place. They can then afterwards do an investigation, but they can't do an investigation beforehand. It's afterwards. And then you get 7 days to do what you like with the money, which might include transferring it to another account.
Or getting it out. My bank has frozen for somebody paying 15 quid, 15 into my HSBC account, for which I've had 30 years. The bank have frozen my account, frozen it. So, you know, I'm seeing this as a gift, turning it into a positive situation. It's caused me a bit of hassle, to say the least, but I've got various accounts, you know, and I advise people to have more than one bank account or a building society, because they are coming to close your accounts. So
at least three, a bank account, a building society account, and a post office account,
and a post
minimum.
office, absolutely, and some cash in individual. Yeah, totally.
minimum, one of each. But yeah, my bank, funnily enough, my building society is the one that's just frozen mine. So I might have to go to another building society, but well, I will.
Yeah, and put money in each of these accounts, because I'd be stuffed if I only had that one account. You know, I couldn't go out and get food. It's ridiculous. And apparently it could take 3 months until they decide, you know, that this £15 was genuine. It's very odd. David,
no. This is part of the target on the head. It's got nothing to do with money. It's to do with closing people down. They're closing us down.
Yeah, I get that.
They're using that as an excuse. So when people say they've only got one bank account these days, I just go, what?
I know, and it's very easy to set up a bank account on your phone. There's loads of them. Monzo, Revolut, is it, darling? Loads of them. Listen, my lovely, we're going to have to go because we've gone over an hour. So it's been really interesting. I did just want to end on where we're getting together next. So we are at the Lawful Remedy live roadshow in Canterbury, in Kent, on the 19th and 20th of October. So David will be there, as will Richard Vobes. He'll be hosting it with me. We have Chris Coverdale, Paul Gunson, Pete the Hat, Tony Rose, and the lovely Jill. And then on Sunday, allegedly...
And Sovereign Pete. Sovereign Pete.
Yes, sorry, he's not on the list. Beg your pardon. Thank you for reminding me. He's coming for the 2 days as well.
Sovereign Pete from the Sovereign Project. He's there both days, yeah.
That's right. He's coming both days. And on Sunday, allegedly Dave is also joining us. Chris again, David here, Peace Officer Davey, Pete the Hat, Tony Rose. So we've got a full-on weekend, and I think it'll be very good. If one person comes, or 300, it can accommodate 300. Contact me. I'll put my email address at the bottom. Again, I know I'm having problems with my email address. A lot of people can't get through for some reason. I don't know, but don't give up. Kizzy63@pm.me. And you can also contact David through his website, which is
thepeopleslawyeruk.com. I'll repeat that because people get confused with the UK and the .com. thepeopleslawyeruk.com. And on that, you'll find the Globalese lexicon, which you can use to help you come to terms with the gaslighting that's going on a monumental level using language across the globe. And you can use it to help wake people up, because it will pattern disrupt, because certain phrases are used a certain way, but they're not used the way that they think, they're not used for the purpose that you think they're being used. One quick question, Karen, is what can people expect from the 2 days, and more specifically at Canterbury?
Yeah, I think because there's a whole bunch of you clever clogs, both days will be different. I think beforehand when we've done them, it's like audience led. So if somebody does have a question, we tend to focus on that question. But we've asked people to send questions to us beforehand. So if you do email me, then you'll be taken to a QR code or just an information. I'll send out an information sheet, and then people can send in their questions beforehand, so we can try and be more organized at the 2 days. But both days will definitely be different. And also I don't want to say this because it might frighten people off, but I think it's important to do a little bit of role play in the afternoon to give people a feeling of what it is to be intimidated by somebody in uniform, and how we can teach them, to stand up to a uniform or to a scary situation. I think that's planned. So yeah, and if you guys have any suggestions for the weekend, then we'll bring those in as well. But there's so much information. Go on, David.
Are there any presentations? Because I saw a...
Well, I think we will. I think we will. Jill's actually in the process of setting up a schedule, which hasn't been confirmed. And I think because there are so many of you, and you have like a subject with your certain expertise, so you'll probably all have a certain amount of time, if we can fit it in, 40 minutes or so, to focus on what it is that you want to present. So if it is about the education system, or if it's about the council tax, or whatever else. So yeah, we're going to have those. We haven't actually done the schedule at the moment, but how would you see the day should plan out? What do you think would be really successful?
Well, I think people do like a shape. They do definitely like a shape. So I can't give you a specific answer to that, but I think they like shape and they like variety. So I think there should be, I think the presentation shouldn't be longer than 30 minutes, to be quite honest. A 30-minute presentation in the morning and a 30-minute presentation in the afternoon. And then maybe a bit of role play when later in the day, and then Q&A in between. Sort of, that's roughly it.
I think that's kind of the schedule that we've got in mind. But I think and I said there's not a but there. I just say it tends to be audience driven to an extent, because we're trying to give solutions to people. And obviously a presentation will sort out a lot of those questions. But then if somebody comes in with a specific question, we'll try and answer that. And hopefully, I mean, I see there's only a certain amount of questions, because there's only a certain amount of issues that we're actually protecting ourselves against here. And the main thing is really, as we were saying, what this whole chat has been about, it's understanding who and what you are, and being this sovereign person, not just thinking about, I've got to fill this out. You've got to feel it. And that's what I think these live roadshows events are also about, is meeting other people, coming together and understanding what you are, not just who you are, but the power you have within yourself.
Well, also, I have in my Building Resilience talk a slide called, well, a mini slideshow within the talk called Collective Active Resistance, because at the what we've focused on in Lawful Remedy so far is individual non-compliance. But I think at Canterbury, especially over 2 days, we should have a section on what can we do as collectives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, if we've got collectives all over the world, wow, we just come together, which is the reason actually why I set up the Freedom Network 4 or 5 years ago, so that people could come together, they could meet and do the work. And yeah, like you said earlier, a lot of people aren't coming to your talks now. People aren't standing in the park. I'm not getting inundated with emails, which is actually quite nice. But we're in the middle at the moment. We're not out of the woods yet. We've got a long way to go.
Oh my God, I don't think we're even in the woods yet. Not only it's the SH, the shit hitting fan scenarios that it's mission creep. We've got the food shortages, the power outages, the water shortages, the more Third World War threats. All these, all to come.
More hurricanes. We're not even in the eye of the storm yet, and now we need to prepare. We need to stock up. Metaphorically speaking, and also physically, we need to stock up in many ways, but coming together.
So I think so if some of us could address the prepping issue. If nobody else wants to do it, I'm happy to do that.
Sure, good one. Anyway, David, we better go, else my phone, my battery's going to run out, my camera. Great speaking to you. I'm going to see you on the 17th on Zoom again on the Richard Abode's Lawful Remedy show. So that would be nice. So we're starting those up again, 17th of October on the Lawful Remedy with Richard, and you're being joined by 3 Daves. So Peace Officer Davey and allegedly Dave. So I will see you then. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Karen, and see you on the next Richard Verb Zoom. Yeah. All right.
Lovely.
Bye.
Cheerio,
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.